So thank you for giving me this opportunity to answer to the clarifications or questions seeking clarifications which have been raised by several honorable members. As much as possible, I'll try to go in a particular order in which the honorable members have spoken. Sometimes if I do have 2 or 3 members raising the same question, without reference to the particular names, I would certainly try to address.
Club those questions and give answer to both.
That's right.
No problem.
So allow me that flexibility, sir. Let me assure all the members to start with that if there are apprehensions that our position has changed, we are now taking a slightly different position, and if we are indeed taking a different position, we should have come to the House, taken opposition parties into confidence. There is no change in position. We are honoring, reinforcing and taking forward what was agreed in Bali. Let me put that on record. So if there are apprehensions, and I'm honestly not sure where this is coming from, maybe partly through some Western media sources or media houses which have been giving from the Western countries, maybe. But let me assure you that there is no difference or change or not even a little amendment. Of course there is a course correction. So my response to all those who have any element of doubt, if there is a changed position, I would like to underline there is no change in position, but of course a little change in or little amendment or what can I say, course correction, and that course correction I'll certainly explain now. My predecessor has raised a lot of important questions for which I'm duty bound to give an answer. But overall, I must say, they are not points of differences or they are not points on which he found that something has gone wrong, is what I understand from the sequencing of the various questions that he's raised. The first thing I would go to respond to him was, is there a retraction? He used the word retraction. I would like to assure him, if he's seen it as retraction, I'm sorry, it's wrong. There is no retraction. Where is the retraction? We are saying that we are fully committed to implementing Bali. And we see Bali as a package. We see Bali as 1 + 9 issues, 9 pillars of which Sri Anand Sharma ji had agreed in Bali, and we are committed to fully implementing Bali. So my answer is, in clarification, please, there is no retraction, sir. I would want the House, through you, Deputy Chairman, sir, that let my predecessor be sure that there is no retraction. On the contrary, we are making sure that that little discrepancy from the single undertaking principle, which fell between 2 stools in Bali, is now being picked up by us, saying stick to single undertaking, just don't push ahead only with trade facilitation. Let's not wait till 2017. Let's have that also agreed even now, if that's possible. That is all we are saying, and there is nothing other than that. In a way, I'm grateful to Anand Sharma ji when he says, yes, that agreement was not all that satisfactory. And that's where, therefore, today we are holding on to some few things, just so that trade facilities.
I must correct you. I said about LDC package. Please don't confuse it with the Bali package. I only refer to LDC package not being robust and satisfactory, just for your information.
With that due answer taken on board, still it is not satisfactory whether it is LDC or whether it's a public stock holding. So, yes, extended to LDC, and my my statement yesterday does mention more than once that we are taking up the case of LDCs. Also, we are not just talking about food stock holding. So yes, I'm grateful that he recognizes that it wasn't a completely satisfactory thing. It could have been better. All of us hoped it could have been better. And we are not holding that against him. Let's assure that to Mr. Anand Sharma. But then, talking about what I had mentioned, the two important pillars amongst these ministerial decisions, my yesterday's paragraph 3, two are of particular significance. I've said particular significance. I have not said two are of great importance. So that is one little clarification to my predecessor. As regards LDCs, we still think those 1 plus 9, 9 of which, some of which consists of the LDCs matters also. Our position is that we should include all of them together when the whole thing happens. And therefore there is no confrontationist stance, and the LDCs, if anything, whether when I was fortunately with the Prime Minister in the BRICS, in the sidelines, and again in G20 in the sidelines, and in some of the bilaterals, G20 of course some of the LDCs, most of the LDCs weren't there, but the kind of inputs that we've received are, we are unable to speak out, but we are sympathetic, we can understand that you're taking up this cause. So there has not been an approach of running away from India. On the contrary, they are probably for some reason unable to publicly articulate their position, but they have said in so many words, they understand the position that India is taking. Here, let me add that the South African Trade Minister, who was with us in Brazil and who later met me in G20, also said, I am taking up the cause of the LDCs, but I know for sure, which is his saying, the LDCs themselves are not able to speak out of it, for whatever compulsion. So, LDCs are not running away from us, we have not been isolated, and let me assure my predecessor who raised that first, that, and also because some of his press statements have come across saying India's isolation is painful. If India hadn't taken this position, we would be even more pained that we have sat back and allowed this whole thing to go away. Western developed countries taking away or snatching away trade facilitation, and we are sitting with a Damocles sword over our head as to when this is going to come down heavily on us. And therefore, this little pain, where we took a principled stand, very much in alignment with what the agreement was in Bali, I think is worth the pain, because today the WTO understands that it cannot go away without us and the many unspoken LDCs, and therefore they are willing to wait till September for all of us to convince each other. So let us be very clear that that little pain about which you referred is a deserving pain, and they have recognized it, and that's why it has been postponed. They not run away with the trade facilitation. I'll also refer to Anand Sharmaji's centrality of WTO and bringing the developmental agenda back on the table in Bali. My statement here, our ambassador's statement in Geneva, all of them underline the importance and the respect that India would want to give for the multilateralism for which WTO stands. We have reiterated that we believe in multilateralism, and we'll keep going with that. There's not going to be any change in that. And again, on bringing development on the agenda, we have done that precisely now too. We are saying, is trade facilitation the only thing, end of the day, about Bali? Or is it trade facilitation and also development? Because for development, we want the inclusive growth, for which my poor have to be fed, for which India should stand up, ensuring that the poorest of poor farmers get the minimum support price, and the poor get fed through your PDS. And therefore here, bringing developmental agenda, if it was mentioned in Bali, it's got reinforced now. So let there not be any confusion on that. I'll quickly move over to Shri Baswarajji Patil, who spoke about kya hamare saakh bade ki nahi. Am I right, if you understood? With this, Bharat Desh ki saakh bad gayi ya nahi bade? Pardon my Hindi, but I think today, अगर प्रिंसिपल पोजीशन हम ना लेते, इससे खराब होगा भारत की साख. ऊपर से मैं ये भी बोलना चाहती हूं कि हमारी साख आज पूरे दुनिया में ये रिकग्नाइज हो गया है, इसीलिए कि जो छोटे देश हैं, जो लेस डेवलप्ड कंट्रीज है, वो जो बोल नहीं पाए हम बोल पाए खड़े होकर के। इसीलिए प्लीज हमारे साथ के ऊपर बात करने वाले को मैं जरूर ये आश्वासन दिलाना चाहती हूं, आज भारत देश के साथ पहले से ज्यादा है, ज्यादा साख है आज। पाटिल जी को आपके द्वारा आई लाइक टू से दैट 86-88 प्राइसेस के ऊपर ऑनरेबल मेंबर ओब्रियन स्पोक TMC. It's important that we understand that that is a grave injustice which continues to go on in the WTO. Many members spoke about Western advanced countries giving subsidy. Also raised that, Mr. Yechuri mentioned about it, saying will we bring it back? Again, Ramakrishnan ji mentioned about it. Will we bring it back onto the agenda and discuss why Western developed countries can get away with the agricultural subsidies that they give, whereas ours becomes an issue? I'll just take a minute to give you figures to exemplify why that 86-88 base year is a grave injustice. Just let's assume and take the case of wheat. Today the MSP per kg is 13 rupees 50 paisa. If you take the international price with which the WTO would compare us, it is 17 rupees 96 paisa. In other words, 4 rupees 46 paisa is being given as subsidy through MSP procurement. Whereas actually the external reference price and through which the subsidy per kg as per WTO guidelines, if you want to take on board, it is at 9 rupees 96 paisa because it's based on the 86-88 base year. So, where your subsidy is actually 4 rupees 46 paisa compared to what prevails in the market, you are actually being accused that you're giving 9 rupees 96 paisa because it's based on 86-88 base year. So this is one of the things on which India is fighting with the WTO, and in fact, to answer Bhupender Yadavji's question, are you giving any proposals? The G33 proposal which was given in July 2014 this year, and that partly probably addresses Shri Sudarshan Nachappanji's question. Was there an absence of political direction in the month of till before July, and because of that we couldn't get into correcting the clause related to peace clause? I'm sorry sir, that was not a failure. We have been arguing, we have submitted a proposal, the G33 proposal, which includes this anomaly and says no, please don't carry on with the 86-88 base year, use a dynamic pricing base which is take the nearest last 3 years average price and then tell us, compared to that, where our subsidy lies, rather than looking at 86 and 88 as a base year. So one of the alternative suggestions that we've given is to make sure that the base year is shifted to a dynamic 3-year average, which is nearest to the year about which we are talking. So if you are talking about 2014, you would talk about the previous 3 years dynamic average, and that will move by 1 year when you're talking about in 2015. So that's a far more progressive way of addressing a base year, and no economist worth his salt can ever justify 30-year-old base and talking about today's prices and then saying, you know, this is not fair. And therefore, I hope the House stands together in understanding that there has not been a time gap in giving political direction to the ambassador who is representing our case. And in any case, the PrepCom that Shri Nachappanji was referring to was in order to rush through with the trade facilitation July 31st, and it was not going into details of peace clause at all. So there was no absence of political direction. Clearly political direction was being given right in time. First week of July itself, our ambassador knew what the government's position was, and she mentioned it there, and subsequently the Western media picked up, but much before we came to July 24th. So no absence of political direction, and actually with constructive alternatives that we've given. I'll further go over to Shri K.C. Tyagi ji, whose passionate appeal, will WTO decide our MSP? Will WTO? This whole debate is about India making sure that our MSPs are decided by us. This whole debate is about how agriculture in this country will be run by our own policies, and therefore this passion is equally passionately answered, Shri K.C. Tyagi, that we don't allow our farmers' prices or agricultural production to be determined by somebody else outside. It's our right and we'll decide, and that's where the fight is going on. Sydney, Sri Tyagi ji also picked up a paper to show that maybe I'm not right or whatever. There is no reference to food security. I'm sorry, that was my intervention in G20. I do not want to go into a graphic detail of what happened. Of course, whoever is interested, I can always do it, but not to take away the time of this, House. When the summing up of the trade minister in Sydney, trade ministers conference of G20 happened, and when, in spite of me giving during my intervention a complete elaboration of India's position, the summary account by the host country did not include our concerns. With due respects, even there, I took the permission of the chair to say I'm going to have to break the protocol, to say I'm terribly let down that you did not even take my concern on board. And that concern was that we have a right to hold public stock and we have a right to distribute food to our poorest of poor, which ensures food security. So it may not have got reported, but I did say that, sir, let me assure you. Shri Navneet Krishnan of ADMK talked about what is this 10% subsidy, what exactly it is. These are details which I wouldn't want to elaborate on, but certainly we have, I think, covered a fair deal of ground. It is nothing but the price that you give to your farmers over and above what is the external reference price, which is, you may compare it to a market price, multiplied by the total stock of, or the total value of what is produced. This is what the WTO uses. And we, even today, are protesting on that, saying it cannot be the price at which you're procuring into what the market price or the differential of the market price to the total quantity of what agricultural produce is. It should only be to the total amount procured through this MSP. So they are widening the basket by making entire agricultural production to come on board. That is wrong, because only to those who we give the minimum support price and procure should they look at the subsidy going into the kitty. And that is an issue which we are raising with WTO, which I can, if the member so desires, Sir Deputy Chairman, I can explain it to him aside rather than here.
You can write to him.
That, just clarification, I have no intention to
No,
interrupt.
Minister has given-
That about this food security thing, what we give to our poor people, that's the supply side, that is a sovereign space, as I mentioned, and you know. That is not something which we discuss in G20 or in WTO, because food security is a sovereign right, sovereign space, that is never on the WTO agenda. So I think the linking the two may be just a word of caution.
Word of caution well taken, but without you holding the food stock, how are you going to talk about food security? माननीय रामगोपाल जी यादव ने परमानेंट सॉल्यूशन अगर नहीं मिलता आप क्या करने वाले हैं, इसके ऊपर अगर आप, मैं आपके हिंदी, मेरे कमजोर हिंदी के बावजूद भी अंडरस्टैंड किया, ठीक है, और आप ये भी पूछे कि क्या है हमारे स्टैंड अगर परमानेंट सॉल्यूशन नहीं मिलता आप क्या करने वाले हैं. मैं सिर्फ एक छोटी सी जवाब देना चाहती हूं इसका. परमानेंट सॉल्यूशन के लिए हम हर कदम मेहनत करके WTO को कन्विंस करने के लिए कोशिश कर रहे हैं. कोशिश अभी भी जारी है. सितंबर के अंदर होपफुली हम हमारी कोशिश का सफलता मिलेगा, ऐसे हमारी उम्मीद है. फिर भी सितंबर तक वेट करें इसका जवाब देने के लिए. येचूरी जी raised quite a few questions. He was happy that I was keeping good company because the countries which are in reference
Only few
are
companies.
fairly countries with whom ideologically
Because only
he's
few
sympathetic.
companies you are happy, eh? Only few companies, that is why you are happy.
Oh, no, no. 3 of them you got to know of. There are many others who the media didn't catch up. No, no. You got to know of. I only said you got to know of. It may be through me, it may be through media. Why are you immediately getting that? No, no, certainly.
Whatever other company you may keep, that's not the issue.
It is the issue. Oh, it's absolutely the issue, sir. No, no.
Sir, the other company you may keep is your prerogative.
It's not my prerogative.
I'm talking about the
representing India.
company you
No, I'm not
you
yielding
have
there.
as far
I'm
as
not
the
yielding
WTO
there,
is
sir.
concerned.
I'm not yielding there, sorry. Yes, the company I will keep is mentioned there, and it's not my prerogative. I'm speaking on behalf of the government of India. I don't want that liberty given to me. Other countries which were sympathetic to India. Sorry?
Okay, okay. All right. Okay, okay, okay. Okay, 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 that's okay.
Excuse
That's
me,
okay,
sir.
please. That's okay.
Oh,
That's
no, no.
okay.
I'm sorry,
That's
sir.
okay. That's okay, please.
I'm sorry, sir. I'm sorry, sir.
That's okay, please.
I've
Please
not
take your
yielded.
seat. All of you take your seat. Okay. You mentioned, that's okay.
With due respects, I've said I'm not yielding. I've also said, I also said, it cannot be my prerogative. So I don't want that concession given to me because I'm speaking for Government of India at the moment. So saying, excuse me, sir. Excuse me, sir. Excuse me, sir.
Please.
The honorable member has not gotten up with the objection. Others are seeming that I have been aggressive. I have not used any unparliamentary word here. I only have said I do not want that prerogative extended to me because that is not even right. And where is the aggression here? I'm sorry. I have only made 2 lines in response. And if that is aggression, I want that to be corrected. It is not aggression. Now I'm being a bit aggressive about it. The countries who have openly in the media and otherwise, even in my statement that I have mentioned, are certainly countries which the media have also captured as supporting us. But we have had several countries who also seem to be running administered prices, telling our representatives in Geneva that we are also doing this. I'd just like to give you an idea of the number of countries who are using administered prices. They may not speak out openly, but they are also giving administrative prices. Besides India, Zambia, Ghana, Zimbabwe, Malawi, Senegal, Kenya, Nigeria, Egypt, Morocco, Tunisia, Botswana, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Nepal, Jordan and Saudi Arabia use minimum support price. So if we have spoken on minimum support price, there are so many other countries who are also doing it. Some of the other countries procure foodstuffs for food aid programs. Even their procurement of a kind meant for an inclusive developmental agenda. Indonesia has a procurement program for rice purchased at administered price. So I'm coming up with countries who have a common cause with the issue that we have taken up. China started to set minimum procurement prices, which they call MPP, in 2004. When market prices are lower, the MPP comes into play. MPP is issued by the Central Committee of the Communist Party of China, and the State Council aim to safeguard farmers' livelihood by increasing their incomes plus ensuring national food security, covers wheat and rice. Kenya also has a procurement program. Therefore, if we think we are isolated, let me assure members, there are, sorry?
The program, please. What I would like to add, I'm just adding, please, I'm just adding something, I'm just adding. After all, parliamentary debate is sometimes very healthy when parliament functions. Please, are you the chair? Now, just one thing which I wanted to mention. In Bali, at about 2:45 in the morning, we were called in and offered a country-specific carve-out for India so that we could have a breakthrough. India rejected the country-specific carve-out, and we also made it very clear, which is part now of the Bali, that even those countries who today do not have resources, but tomorrow may have resources in future to start food security programs, their right also must be protected. That's I'm sharing with the House.
Thank you. So, the question of administered price, our procurement policies, sorry, 1 minute. And based on which, when we went to the WTO, to have an impression that we've got isolated is absolutely not correct. For whatever reason, if countries have not spoken, many of them have been in touch with us saying we are unable to speak out, which is what I exemplified by saying what the South African trade minister mentioned to me. So it's not just my perspective, it is not just my feeling, it is also corroborated by another BRICS country's trade minister. The entire peace clause debate is the argument on which we are very clearly saying public stock holding, procurement and issues have a mutually linked relationship. And in that, the Damocles sword which is hanging on India's head and the sword which is hanging on all these countries over their head is this, that the end of the 2017 is when the Western countries or WTO said we'll find a permanent solution. Our argument is you don't have to wait till 2017, at least let the process begin. Since post-Bali, no movement except for 3 meetings which were held, and those 3 meetings did not go into the substantial issue of getting a permanent solution. And we were increasingly getting worried that once 31st July trade facilitation, to which we are committed, let me repeat that, to which we are committed, if we had signed it on 31st July, there would not be one more reason for them to come back to sit with you and say, let's talk permanent solution. We were very, and therefore, rightly, I agree, when Mr. Yechury spoke about it, he very clearly said, are you using this to ensure that they will come back to talk to you about trade about a permanent solution? Yes, it's one of the ways in which we want to ensure that the Western developed countries, which rightly are, which was observed rightly by Shri Anand Sharma in his press-related matter, that they are now looking at plurilateral agreements and they're moving away from the central philosophy of WTO, which is multilateral. So if they're going away to a plurilateral, platform, they wouldn't have a reason to come back to WTO to say, we want the LDC's issues to be addressed, we want your food stock holding to be addressed. They wouldn't have a reason to come back to us. So we were worried, and therefore we wanted to ensure that even as we do the trade facilitation, they would understand that the issue related to public stock holding will also have to be addressed. I would very quickly move on to the others who have spoken. Yes, there are issues of non-price, non-tariff barriers which are being created, on which we need to address, and we are constantly working and making sure that reduction reduction and in disciplining of agricultural subsidies as a part of the Doha development round, we ensure that the other aspects of trade constraints are also going to be equally addressed. So that is not being forgotten, and we shall take that forward also. Shri Bhupender Singh ji from BJD addressed issue about should the WTO decide on our MSP, which is also a point which was raised by Honorable D. Raja. Certainly not. We are fighting for the cause of India retaining its sovereign right, and the sovereign right is to be sure that you are able to hold on to those decision-making powers which are entirely your right. And Shri K.P. Ramalingam ji also raised issue about decisions in the WTO. They are normally done by consensus, and therefore we will seek to negotiate on the various committees in WTO for the establishment of a fast-track dedicated system so that a permanent solution is arrived at. Dinsa ji can be assured that we are not going to let away the right for deciding on MSP to the WTO. It is going to be entirely an Indian issue, and we will have full right on that. I have a feeling most of the questions have been addressed. I don't mean to ignore anyone, but I think as it is largely most of the issues have been covered. Shantaramji Naik said, is it an indirect way to sabotage food security? No, if all this fight is going on, why would there be a sabotage of food security, sir? You can be assured. Certainly we are not going to let that go. And let us assure, through the Deputy Chairman, Naik ji, be sure India is not humiliated. It hurt me to have that word come from you, a senior member. Is India humiliated? Not at all. I think we've stood by principle and we reinforce what has happened in Bali. That agreement is fully honored and we are tightening on it. And therefore there's no humiliation. We have proudly stood there standing on our principle. So I suppose with all that, I have given the clarification which honorable members have asked. If anybody I have ignored, it is not intended. You are very welcome to approach me. I will certainly give you the necessary clarification.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Minister. Now, Minister of Power.
Clarifications that have been left out. One was I talked about the non-price subsidies that the West gives. Are you going to bring that on the agenda? Yes. The second one is regarding the practical solutions that your statement refers to, that we, India, have proposed. Are you willing to share that with us? What is your opinion?
If you can't say now, you're right.
Not been clarified.
One thing I would like to say about the non-price barriers, about the subsidy which the Western developed countries are giving, we have periodically, with bilateral talks and in the WTO and in the G20, come up with figures to say how much the United States of America, how much the European Union are giving as subsidies to their farmers. And we also have said, post the Uruguay round, those subsidies have been kept out of discussion in the WTO. We have repeatedly asked as to why those have been frozen and why only the developing countries' subsidies are being raised. So every attempt is being made. Those boxes are the recent developments to give. Green box, amber box and blue box are all the latest ways. But we are making every attempt in every fora to say why that should not be brought on the agenda. We assure you that we will keep coming.
Now Minister of Power will
reply
to the discussion on the Ministry of Power.
Some of the solutions have been mentioned in my answer about the dynamic average that we want to be bringing in, so that the 10% is going to be a realistic 10% rather than a false base year of 86-88. We have also spoken about giving a timeline so that activated discussions will happen for agriculture, so that a permanent solution doesn't wait till 2017, that it happens earlier. Thank you.